The Sydney Kings have done something that every team has tried, but very few have succeeded at: slowing down Bryce Cotton. And they made it look easy. So Sydney headed down to Adelaide on Saturday night for one of the most anticipated games of the season. Kendrick Davis's first time back in Adelaide since his exit, and all the comments that he said in the preseason.
I don't like how I was treated in Adelaide. It's no secret. I felt like I was treated bad. Yeah, I got extra spice for that.
And if that wasn't enough, just the matchup of Bryce Cotton versus Kendrick Davis was mouthwatering. But Sydney were very aware of how important this game was for their season overall, but specifically for Kendrick Davis. So Brian Goorjian came into this game with a very clear defensive plan to at least try and slow down Bryce Cotton. And by no means did Sydney reinvent the wheel with this defensive scheme that they brought up, but having 3 elite defensive guards, 2 of them being over 6'5", made it so much easier. And then for Sydney's offense, exploit the size advantage that almost every Sydney player has over Bryce Cotton and make him work on his defensive side as much as possible. To show how well Sydney played in this game, I want to go over Bryce's stats as well. So he had 7 points, he was 3 of 10 from the field, didn't hit a single 3-pointer, he was 0 of 4. It was his first single-figure game in over a year, his 12th single-figure game ever, and the first ever time that he shot less than 50% from the free throw line. And what that tells me is that Sydney really rattled him. So we start pretty much immediately from the first possession of the game. And essentially what Sydney are going to do is anytime there's a screen set by any Adelaide player with Bryce, the blitz is going to come immediately. So the double is going to come hard and fast. So we'll see Bryce get the ball pretty much straight away. And Cooks is essentially ignoring the man that he's defending and expecting and relying on the rest of Sydney to scramble out of the double and to take up the rest of the space. So the double comes hard and Bryce immediately has to get rid of it. A couple of possessions later, and look at the defense that Daly is running on Bryce. So it's a 4-on-4 basketball game, and that's essentially what it was for the entire 40 minutes. Daly doesn't want Bryce to touch the ball almost ever. He's eventually going to get the ball off the screen, and then again, immediately, the massive double comes, the immediate blitz. So Bryce knows this. Bryce is an incredibly smart player as a point guard. He's such a willing passer as well. But Sydney are playing basically, 4-on-4 basketball, make someone else beat you. So late in the first quarter, and Bull Qual is guarding Bryce Cotton, and Bull Qual was far and away the best defender on him today. And just have a look at this possession here. All the way, basically at half court, is Bryce Cotton being just taken completely out of the play by Bull Qual. Jalen Galloway spent a lot of time guarding Bryce as well, and the full court pressure here, just to make life a little bit uncomfortable. So the ball just gets over. Took about 6 seconds to get the ball over half court. That's 6 seconds taken off of the shot clock. And now with Galloway guarding Bryce and taking him out of the play, Adelaide just are really unsure of what to do in this possession. And they're a little bit rushed, and they give up this Matt Kenyon 3. And they did that a whole bunch. Matt Kenyon took a whole bunch of threes in this game, and Sydney were more than willing to let him take it. We're in the second quarter now, Galloway being guarded by Bryce, and they're eventually, with some off-ball action, they're going to get Bryce the ball. And have a look at the attention that they brought. The double comes. The double all the way back at half court comes because they just want the ball out of Bryce Cotton's hands. But look at the rest of the defensive setup now. Sydney are almost in a zone with the 2 guarding the ball. He's coming up here to kind of be the help so that if the handoff gets to Cheatham. Cameron's on an island here because there's not a lot he can do on the offense. Obviously someone guarding DJ because he's an elite shooting threat. But Cooks is in the middle of the zone, just kind of manning and anchoring this defense. Matt Kenyon wide open in the corner. They eventually get the ball to him. Sydney are happy for him to take that shot. That's the only 3 he hit in this game. He was 1 of 4. That's a shot that Sydney are willing to live with. A bit later in the quarter, Sydney do make an error with their coverage. Rakocevic comes up and sets the screen pretty much at half court, and Suarez is a step late. He's not there to kind of cut off the pass and, get the blitz quickly. And Bryce uses his speed to get around it. Now Galloway's scrambling, and it results in some points. And we're going to cut to Goorjian when we get the ball down the other end, and Goorjian is furious. That was the first defensive error that they make in this game, really. and there's immediately going to be a change-up with Quatnoy coming in the game. One of the most impressive parts of what Sydney were able to do is that regardless of who was guarding him, the defensive scheme stayed the same amongst the rest of the team. That being said, Bull Qual clearly did, the best job and was on him for the longest. And I think the most difficult thing about it is Bull Qual is a guard, but the length that he has is just ridiculous. We'll watch this clip again, but, just hounding him, not letting anything come easy, but just his timing. His arms are so long, and his timing, on reading the deflection and reading the pass is ridiculous. I mean, he's almost behind Isaac White here, and he still has the wherewithal to know that the pass is coming, to read it perfectly, get the deflection, and then still keep this possession alive. And then Delhi, just being the elite point guard that he is, knows that Davis is leaking out for the two. And then this is the very next possession following that fast break basket. Watch how good Bull Qual is here on Bryce Cotton. He's trying to deny the handoff. Eventually it gets to him. And then look at the positioning. Recognizes that the screen is coming, back towards the center of the court. So he's kind of top guarding Bryce, allowing the drive because he knows that he's got either Cooks in the corner or Kendrick Davis, more towards the middle of the floor. So he's funneling Bryce Cotton down to the corner. Eventually, that's where he goes. He's still there in time to recover for the, sort of shot fake that Bryce had. And then eventually forces the pass, and the pass has to go. And that shot probably should have gone. We're into the third quarter now, and this kind of shows the cerebralness of Bryce Cotton, that if he sees any kind of advantage, he's going to look to take advantage as quickly as possible. Even when Galloway slips down, he still recovers. But right now, we've got Galloway guarding Bryce, and Galloway probably struggled the most on defense on Bryce, but he made up for that on the offensive side, which I'll show a little bit later. But, pretty much every possession in the first half was, a handoff to Bryce. And Galloway expects that. So he's going to overplay and kind of get ready for that handoff to cut it off. But Bryce is smart, so he's going to back cut and get the pass and draws the foul. The third quarter started with Bryce getting a little bit, off the leash, but then Sydney immediately shut it down. The way that Sydney shut it down was really by denying Bryce the ball. So watch Bull Qual and Bryce Cotton this entire possession, because Bull Qual is not letting Bryce touch the ball whatsoever. It's a full denial. It's jumping in the passing lanes. It's knowing where the ball and the man is at all times. This is a full 24-second possession. Bryce didn't even, have a chance to look at the ball. Jumping back to the third quarter. So this was immediately after a score. And even little things like this, Bryce being forced to pass away because Galloway is forcing him, to the sideline. And Suarez is plugging this spot a little bit just so he can't turn on the jets, quickly cross over to his left and explode to the ring. And then there's going to be a two-man game because a lot of the offense involves this pick and roll, this high pick and roll, pretty much back at half court to allow Bryce to get downhill. Because once he gets downhill, there's no stopping him. But the positioning of Suarez so that he can't take the three, or if he does, it's going to be a really deep three, and hopefully by that point Galloway's recovered. But Bryce does take the three. He has to pull up because look at all the bodies that are in front of him. Sydney aren't really in a zone right now. They kind of are, because there's 5 white jerseys that know exactly where Bryce is and, are stopping him from getting to the ring and forcing, this is a tough angle of a pass to Isaac White, but they're okay with that. If White's taking the shot instead of Bryce, then Sydney are going to live with that. Or, Daly's definitely going to cut off this pass to Flynn Cameron. Matt Kenyon in the dunker spot is basically not in the play. And then if Bryce does decide to pass it to the screener, well, then he's got a similar problem. He's got a bunch of white jerseys in front of him. And based on the way that Sydney was scrambling out of their defense, then it was going to result in not a lot anyway. But based on the way that Bryce was playing in this game, because of the way Sydney were defending him, that shot's not going in anyway. The final clip of Sydney's defense that I want to show is following this offensive rebound. So Cameron misses the corner three, the tip out, they go straight to Bryce, and look at the attention. 5 eyes all looking at Bryce, which isn't that surprising. But Quatnoy coming over to help. Jalen Galloway's trying to recover out of the screen, as Bryce's defender gets back. And, Quatnoy fully coming in to help. Cheatham wants to go downhill. The pass is going to come to Cheatham, but it's too late, results in a steal and a turnover. Other than Sydney's elite defense making life hell for Bryce Cotton, the other thing they did really good was forced him to play defense himself. Now, Bryce is no slouch on defense, but he's 182 centimeters, and that's where he gets most of his rest. So Sydney really tired him out on defense by making him run through screens and make him play defense in the low block. This is one of the first possessions in the first quarter, and once Daly realised that it was going to be Bryce matching up on him, immediately gets to the block, calls for the ball, clears everyone out, and Adelaide aren't really going to double until it's, really low. This is something that Bull Quoll did a couple of times as well. See, Bull Quoll is 200 centimeters. He's listed as a forward, but he guards guards most of the time. The team completely clears out, and despite there being a whole bunch of defenders there, to help Bryce, he still gets forced to foul. Jalen Galloway did a really good job of exploiting this matchup off a couple of switches. So Bryce switches with Kenyon on the pick here with Daly, but he does not want to guard Cooks in the post. So he sends Cameron into the middle and Galloway into Cotton. They're going to get the ball inside to Cooks, and then 5 players go to stop him because that's a mismatch that's never going to be advantageous. The ball eventually gets to Galloway, and Galloway is just feasting at this matchup. Just one out, jab, and rises up because he's just so much taller. The very next possession, there's a little bit of transition play, so the matchups aren't exactly right. Galloway again guarding Cotton, one screen, shot doesn't go, but Adelaide is still forced to work, and Bryce is still forced to run through a screen and exert some more energy. And the final clip now, just to show how well executed this game was by the Sydney Kings on both ends of the floor. The screen's going to come here. Noi sets a screen on Bryce with Kenyon, and they switch. And as soon as they switch, what does Noi do? He just goes and stands in the middle of the paint because he's got a good, 30 to 40 centimeters on his defender. And the Kings immediately recognize this. Cooks with the pass inside. The foul comes and one. This was such a perfectly executed game by Sydney. There was no unbelievable game plan in this game that Brian Goorjian drew up for Sydney. It was just executed to perfection by all 5 players on the court at all times. It does raise an interesting question for Adelaide though. What's their plan B? What do they do when Bryce is having an off night, or he's being shut down like he was in this game, or God forbid he gets hurt? For them, it's good that they had this game this early in the season because it gives them a little bit of time to figure out, another game plan, someone else who's going to score the points when Bryce doesn't. But for the Kings, it sets up a really interesting chess match this week because their next game is against Scott Roth and the Tasmania Jack Jumpers, 2 of the biggest brain coaches in the league, and with it being an Ignite Cup game where every quarter there are points on the line, you know that they're going to want all 4 quarters.